Tell you, it's been a very rich weekend for me personally and for our family. To celebrate Thanksgiving, we went up to my sister's. My sister lives in Brookings there. She has two sons. Both are now out of high school. One is living over in Indiana. He's helping with the church plant there. And then her youngest, Micah, is going to SDSU, and he's deeply involved with the Oasis ministry up at Grace Point in Brookings. And we kind of felt a shift a little bit, a turning of the seasons in our family life. And it was so cool to see because both my sister and I have prayed ever since our kids were born that our kids would have a good relationship with each other, that they would be really close cousins, that they would have a friendship that would extend well into their adult years. And of course, we've been praying that Jesus would be at the center of that. So as we celebrated Thanksgiving this year, it kind of took on a life of its own. It's like the cousins were calling each other and planning things. I'm pretty sure we were just brought along to get them there and provide food. But to hear the conversations between them was just an answer to prayer for us as they were talking about, what's your church doing and how are you growing spiritually? What do you think God's calling you to? It doesn't get better than that. And then over the past 2 days, I've been able to spend time with the Patton family. And of course, we're grieving Dorothy Patton's death. She was a matriarch of this church. But to spend time with her family and to know that as she finished her race, she could look back and she could see that her kids had taken the baton of faith. Her kids loved Jesus. She could see grandkids who loved Jesus. She knew of great-grandkids that loved Jesus. So as a family, they know the generational blessing of God. They know what it is to experience God's goodness generation after generation after generation. I don't know that there's any blessing on this side of heaven that compares to that. I know that's what meant the most to Dorothy. I know that that's what means the most to me. It's not going to matter what kind of house I live in. It's not going to matter how much money I make. It's not going to matter what kind of adrenaline rush experiences I've checked off my bucket list. What's going to matter most is when I can look back and I see my family following Jesus as well. And that's why I was so excited to see Jeremiah and Anastasia take this step that you did this morning. And it's just indicative of your family, of what I've seen. And it really is why, as a church, we're just going all out to try to provide excellent youth ministry, excellent kids ministry. But more than that, we don't just want you to drop your kids off. We want you to get involved. And so your serving in these areas of ministry will help you be a better parent spiritually to your kids. This is why that we're working to provide experiences that you can enjoy together as a family that's going to help keep your kids' hearts soft towards God. So take advantage of these opportunities, and then take advantage of the day-to-day opportunities you have with your kids, whether you're tucking them in or whether you're getting them up in the morning or whether you're around the dinner table, whether you're taking a road trip together. All those times are key opportunities you can use to help your kids know and love Jesus. And it's been just especially on my mind, I guess, this weekend, now that we're seeing our kids launch into adulthood and after spending time with the Patton family. And I just want to encourage you with all I am, be purposeful about this. Take responsibility for it. You will not regret it. There's no blessing that compares. So thank you. Thanks for hearing me out on that. And today we're wrapping up our series on responsibility. And throughout this series, we have been challenging ourselves with a question. And the question is, am I taking responsibility for my life? Then we pause and we muster up a little bit of adolescent attitude and we ask ourselves, really? Am I taking responsibility for my life? Really? So for old time's sake, as we wrap this series up, let's ask ourselves that question together one more time, all right? Am I taking responsibility for my life? Really? Very good. Like I said, we got to challenge ourselves with this because irresponsibility is very difficult to see in the mirror. We have our list of excuses ready to go that in our mind justify those times where we're irresponsible. But that doesn't change the consequences that we experience. And so during these 4 weeks, we've been taking this question into the various areas of our life because there's some truths about responsibility and irresponsibility that we've been covering. And one is that irresponsibility, it doesn't happen in isolation. And it doesn't happen in a vacuum. If you're irresponsible, eventually, if you don't take responsibility for it, then someone else will have to foot the bill. Someone else will have to clean up the mess, whether that's in our marriages, whether that's in our families, whether that's in our community, whether that's in our church, wherever. And so the consequences are huge. That's why it's so important that we're responsible. And then last week, we faced up to our own tendency, even as followers of Jesus, to be irresponsible. Sometimes we hide behind prayers. And one of the times we know that we're hiding behind prayers is if we're trying to pray our way out of a situation that we behaved our way into. And as we looked at the story last week, God challenged Joshua. Joshua, get up, get off your knees, stop praying. It's not time to pray. It's time to do something. So is there any area in your life where God is telling you, okay, no, I mean, it's not that praying's bad, but now's not the time. Get up and do something about what you're responsible for. Don't try to use prayer as an escape hatch from our responsibilities. And today, as we come down the home stretch here, I want to take us back, way back. I mean, back to adolescent years, even back to when we were a kid, all right? And we'd be upset, and we'd be talking to our mothers and fathers, right? Something wasn't going our way. And this is something that every child in every culture since the dawn of time has said to their parents. It was one of these things that we're not taught. It's just there when we're born, right? We will look them straight in the eye when we're upset. And I'm going to see if you can finish this for me. We'll go, hey, that's not fair. Exactly. You know what I'm talking about. That's not fair. To which every parent and every grandparent has responded, life's not fair. Yes. All right. But it's the truth. Life is not fair. And we know this. We know that life isn't fair. But there's something in us that wants life to be fair, at least some of the time. Right? If I'm honest, the only time I'm concerned about the fairness of life are those times when I feel like my slice of the pie is a little bit smaller than it should be. That's when I'm concerned about fairness. If I find myself in a situation where maybe my slice of the pie is bigger than other people's slice, then I'm not so concerned about fairness. That's usually when I break out and God is so good. God is so good. You're probably the same way. Only time you're concerned about fairness is when you feel like you're getting the short end of the stick or things aren't going your way. That's when fairness is on the radar. But this is why this is important, and this is where this pertains to this whole discussion on responsibility that we've been having. All right, if we're not careful, the unevenness of life, the unfairness of life, which is just a fact, and we cannot avoid it, but if we're not careful, the unfairness of life can quickly turn into excuses. Like, hey, I mean, I got the short end of the stick here, right? I didn't get my fair share. I got overlooked. I got left out. I didn't inherit. So now you're telling me I'm supposed to be the responsible one? Tell me I'm supposed to take care of my business? You expect me to carry my weight? Why should I do that when there's no guarantee that it's going to work out for me? It's easy for you to say, right? You got the big break. You married the beauty queen. You get to drive the hot car. I mean, the door opened up for you. So why should I sweat it if you have to deal with a little bit of unfairness in life due to my irresponsibility? Why should I care? Maybe it's time that you get a taste of how life isn't fair. Let me just say something to you. If you find yourself tending down that track, if you find yourself getting frustrated with the unfairness of life and it just makes you want to throw your hands up and quit, or check out, all right? Here's what you need to do. You need to stop it. You need to quit that, all right? And the primary reason I say that isn't because I don't want to have to deal with your irresponsibility. I mean, that's not it. The primary reason I tell you this is because we've been hitting at this since the first week of this series, is that irresponsibility leaves a huge hole in your soul. When you're irresponsible, there is a void inside of you. And if you continue to go down this spiral, well, I mean, I can't get what he has or I can't get what she has, so why even try? That takes you down a dead-end path where you will never be happy on that path. Irresponsible people are never happy. They might be smug because they've gotten away with something, but they're never really satisfied. Never leads to anything good. I love what Benjamin Franklin had to say about this. Look at what he says here. He said, "He that is good at making excuses is seldom good at anything else. He that is good at making excuses is seldom good at anything else. So when we go into this death spiral of irresponsibility, it's like, well, I mean, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not guaranteed. It's a need, all that. Ugh. And you might even tell us your story, and we might even be convinced that we should have sympathy for you. All right? But that doesn't change the ultimate outcome. And deep down, you know. So don't get caught up in that death spiral. Well, life isn't fair, so why even try? Benjamin Franklin said, if you're good at making excuses, you're not going to be good at anything else. And so the unfairness of life, we have to be very careful of this. It can turn into a trap for us where we want to hide behind a trail of excuses. And the crazy thing is that the unfairness of life isn't just a trap for those with the smaller slice of the pie. The unfairness of life can also become a responsibility trap for those who end up with the bigger slice of the pie, with those who end up with extra. Because you know what we tend to do with extra? We tend to waste it. The more money you have than what you need, the more money you tend to waste. The more time you have on your hands than what you need, you tend to waste. The more of anything you have that's more than you need, you tend to waste. So we all tend to be irresponsible when it comes to the extra too. So either way, life isn't fair. It can lead us to irresponsibility if we're not careful. And what it boils down to is this: the real issue isn't how do we make life fair. We can't. The real question is, what am I going to do with the hand that I've been dealt? That's the real issue. What am I going to do with the slice of pie that God has given me in life? And the really amazing thing is that Jesus speaks directly to this. He teaches on this. He addressed this over 2,000 years ago, but this still hits us, which is why I try to tell you every week, you need to be reading this for yourself. Don't wait for me to cover this on Sunday mornings. Let this whet your appetite to get into Scripture for yourself. Jesus addresses this. So go ahead and go to the book of Matthew. Book of Matthew is the first book of the New Testament. It's about 2/3 of the way into your Bibles. And if you're familiar with Jesus and his ministry, you know that he often taught using stories, or they're called parables. And these parables that involved everyday scenarios that his audience would be familiar with, and he did this to make a point. It helped the truth connect more readily to their life. And in Matthew 25, there's this series of parables that Jesus shares that shows us how God views things when it comes to what we've been given in life. And in the midst of these parables, Jesus addresses the unevenness of life and how we're supposed to respond to that. Parable, if you grew up in church and going to Sunday school and stuff, the parable you'll know is called the parable of the talents. And you need to understand here that when we're talking about talents in this sense, we're not talking about like America's Got Talent, like performance skills. What talent was a measure of money. The NIV now renders this as bags of gold, which is probably better, a more accurate translation of the original intention. But Jesus uses the concept of money to teach about the unfairness of life. And you've got to understand that Jesus will often use with these parables an extreme story to make a point. All right? So Jesus is showing us how God views the unfairness of life and what we're to do about it. And spoiler warning here, God isn't nearly as concerned about making life fair on this side of heaven as we'd probably like him to be. He's much more concerned about what we do with what we've been given. So let's jump in. Matthew chapter 25, verse 15. We're in the middle of a couple parables. And that's why Jesus starts with this again, all right? Because he's teaching multiple stories that help us get a point. Again, it, referring to the kingdom of God, will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants, and here's a big word, he entrusted his wealth to him. So, all right, crazy situation here. A very wealthy master, he's going on a long journey, and he entrusts his wealth into the hands of his 3 servants. And the word entrust there shows us what he wants them to do, all right? He's not giving his wealth for them to guard it, keep it safe. He's entrusting it to them, meaning I'm counting on you to do the same thing with my wealth that I would do with my wealth. He's counting on them not to guard it, but to invest it, to expand it, to grow. He's not wanting to use his servants like a savings account. He wants his servants to be like financial advisors, financial consultants that we hire, that like, how should we leverage our money best? That's what he's wanting his servants to do. Now look at this. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold. And just so you know, 1 bag of gold was the equivalent of 20 years' worth of wages for a daily laborer. So a lot of money. That's 1 bag of gold. This servant has been given 5 bags of gold. To another, 2 bags. And to another, 1 bag, each according to his own ability. All right? So one got 5 bags, one got 2 bags, and the other got 1 bag of gold. To which we might say, hey, that's not fair. It's not fair that some would be entrusted with more than others, to which Jesus would probably respond, chill, it's a story, okay? But on the other side of this, isn't it fair that the master should be able to spread out and entrust his wealth in others as he best sees fit? That's the crazy thing about fairness, is that almost everything is fair from somebody's point of view on this. Well, then he went on his journey. The man who'd received 5 bags of gold went at once. I love that. He didn't waste any time. He went at once and put his money to work, meaning he invested it in various ventures. And he gained 5 bags more. Why? Because he knew that's what his master wanted him to do with it, not to guard it, but to expand it, to grow it. Verse 17, so also the one with 2 bags gained 2 more. So the second servant, he doubles his master's wealth as well. The man who received 1 bag went off, and look at this, dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money, at which most of us, listening would probably soundtrack playing in our mind. Dun, dun, dun. How could he do that? Why would anyone do that? Master's not going to like that. Verse 19, after, and I can't emphasize this enough, after a long time, a lot of time has passed, all right? A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So long, they're probably beginning to wonder, is he ever going to come back? Which is part of the test. After a long time, the master of those servants returned, and what does he do? Settled accounts with them. Settled accounts. Again, that shows us the master isn't just wanting them, okay, show me the money. Bring me the money that I entrusted you with. No, he's wanting, show me what you did with it. What did you do with this money that I gave into your care? He didn't want to see the deposit. He wanted to see the return on this investment. He came to settle accounts. Verse 20, the man who received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more. And I bet this servant could hardly wait to settle accounts with his master. I bet he was eager. Ooh, all right, you gave me 5. Look at this, 5 more. Woo! His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things, to which I'm sure most people listening to Jesus' story would have gone, a few things, 5 bags of gold? Are you kidding me? He said, you've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come, share in your master's happiness. I'm thinking this guy's definitely, in the lead for employee of the month, all right? Well, the man with 2 bags, verse 22, the man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. To which the first servant might have cried out, well, hey, that isn't fair. You're pretty much treating him exactly the same way, but I earned you a lot more money. But the master was happy with the second servant as well. He said, come, share in your master's happiness. Here the lights would fade a little bit because we know what's coming up next, right? Third servant shows up on the scene, and he's all dirty and sweaty and grimy and stinky because he had to go dig up that money that he buried. Verse 24, then the man who'd received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said. And I'll just tell you, this is a great example of first century whining and complaining, and I want you to listen carefully to what he does here. Because when we pay attention, we see something he tries to do. He tries to shift blame. Deep down, he knows he hasn't done what's expected of him. He knows he didn't embrace this opportunity, but he's going to shift blame off of himself. But that's what irresponsible people do. They whine and they shift blame. He said, I knew that you were a hard man. Boss, you're a tough cookie. You're hard to work for. I'm not counting on any mercy from you. I mean, your expectations are so unrealistic. You're impossible to please. I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. The in there is just an accusation of the unfairness of life. That statement just oozes with it. You don't even have to lift a finger, and you make tons of money. All right, so how can I expect you to understand this predicament that you've put me in? So I was afraid, and I went out, and I hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. But the reason that there isn't any more is because of you. I would guess that this third servant wasn't looking forward to the return of his master. I'm guessing he dreaded the thought of it. I'm guessing he worked constantly, looking over his shoulder, wondering, a sense of impending doom. He had to know his master wouldn't be happy, and he was right. Verse 26, his master replied, you wicked, some translations say, you worthless, lazy servant. So the master, he doesn't buy these excuses at all, right? You didn't do this. You didn't take this path because of who I am. You did this because you were lazy, because you were afraid, because you didn't have the gumption or the ambition to accept the responsibility that I've entrusted you with. And now you want to blame me? So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, all right, if that was your thinking, you should have put my money on deposit with the banker so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. In other words, if your reasoning was really what you say it is, then you would have done something different. You would have come up with a better plan. But really, you're just hiding. You're hiding behind excuses. You have grabbed onto your perceived idea of what's fair and what's unfair in life, and now you're trying to use it as a dodge. Verse 28. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. All right? And I'm sure the guy who only got 2 bags back, well, hey, how come I don't get some of this too? I mean, I was a good servant. You should entrust me with more. Jesus doesn't even seem concerned about that. Verse 29, forever has, in other words, forever has something that's been entrusted to them, forever who has responsibilities will be given more, and they'll have an abundance. But whoever does not have, in other words, whoever is not responsible with what's been entrusted to them, even what they have will be taken from them. And look at this. Throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, whenever you come across that statement in the New Testament, whenever Jesus talks about someone weeping and gnashing, I know it's not gnashing, I just like saying it that way. Weeping and gnashing of teeth, it just sounds awful. But whenever Jesus uses that term, it's in connection with the story of someone who had this incredible opportunity. Someone who had this amazing opportunity to be welcomed into the inner circle, all right? Someone who had a great opportunity to do something that mattered, and yet they either ignored it, or they rejected it, or they blew it. And when all was said and done, they ended up on the outside looking in, and they're mourning, and they're weeping, and they're gnashing teeth, which means they're just eaten up with regret. Like, oh, if I could do that over. Oh, if I could just have one more chance. How could I have done that? And then Jesus goes on with the next parable. Now, there's so many layers to this parable. I mean, you could park here a long time. Yes, there's implications about eternity and salvation woven into this. There are huge implications about finances and what we do with the financial resources God has entrusted us with. Right? But the main point, I think the main point of all this is that everybody gets an opportunity. Everybody gets an opportunity. Might not be even, right? Everybody's opportunity might not be equal. No one really deserves the opportunity anyway, right? It's a privilege, and still everyone gets an opportunity. What's important is what you do with the opportunity that you've been given. That's what we're responsible for. That's what counts. That's what we're going to be held accountable for. So what we need to focus on isn't is life fair. What we need to focus on is How do we make the most of the opportunity that we've been given? Yeah, some people get 5 bags in life. Some people get 2 bags in life. Some people just get 1 bag in life. All of us fall into one of those categories. And the quickest way to get off track is to focus, especially to focus on the 5-bag people. Right? Say, well, man, they're just lucky. Right? It's not, they were born into it. They had it handed to them. They were just at the right time and the right place. They didn't even have to work for it. And to top it off, they're smart, funny, and good-looking. But we can't change that. But I'll tell you, if the 5-bag people aren't careful, they're going to take that opportunity for granted. And they could end up spending that on themselves. How do you think the master would feel about that? I entrusted you with this and you spent it on yourself? Even in this parable, none of the servants had the audacity to do that. Not even the wicked, lazy servant. And then there's the 1-bag people, those, the people who were born into the broken home. And it was chaos and it was tragic. And life has just been an uphill climb for them since day one. And school didn't come easy. And they weren't blessed with social skills. And they didn't have connections. And they had to work 10 times as hard for everything compared to everyone else. And then when something did finally develop, then they were taken advantage of by their partners and they were left holding the bag. It just seems like the deck has been stacked against them from day one. Those are the 1-bag people. And then there's most of us somewhere in the middle, right? But in every case, the question is, what are we going to do with what's been given to us? If we start comparing with other people, we're going to end up in that ditch of excuses. So our focus should be, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to leverage what's been given to me for the sake of the master? And I get excited when I see 5-bag people who get it. I mean, it really is a beautiful, incredible thing where God has blessed them with wisdom and they recognize the opportunity for what it is, and so they don't get caught up into that trap of just spending it on themselves. I mean, maybe they were able to retire early, or maybe they were able to retire in really good shape, but instead of structuring things so their biggest concern in life is, oh, what's my next tea time? They're like, no, I'm going to take advantage of this season of life. In fact, I might make a bigger difference for God in this season of life than all the years leading up to that. I love when I see people, 5-bag people like that, who get it. Makes me think of Bob and Marcia Vermeer. They're doctors down in Haiti. They could have retired a long time ago. Incredibly gifted people. And yet, they have chosen to invest a season of their life in the mission down in Haiti. They helped the mission transition from the old hospital to the new hospital that was built just a few years ago. And they've been helping the nursing school get set up, and they've been discipling the Haitian staff so that they know what servant leadership looks like down there. And the work is hard, and it's grueling, and I can't help but think there aren't several times a day he's not thinking, oh, this would be so much easier in an American hospital. And then there's the heartache of those cases that come across your path. They're like, if only they were in a hospital, we might be able to save this person, and I can't. Not here. But they've put themselves out there. And then, God gave us these resources, not just for our enjoyment, but for us to make a difference for Him. I love stories about people who get that. And I got to guard my heart against envy of people in those situations. Do you know what stories really inspire me? And I'm guessing you're the same way. I'm guessing your favorite movie, I'm guessing your favorite book, your favorite relative, your favorite friend, I'm guessing your favorite stories, just like mine, are the ones about the 1-bag people. They didn't have a lot going for them. And they got dealt a terrible hand in life, but instead of making excuses, they leveraged what they had. They made the most of it. I'm thinking George Washington Carver. He's a story like that. Abraham Lincoln. It's a story like that. Louis Zamperini. If you've never read Unbroken or watched that movie, incredible story about a 1-bag guy who ended up making a huge difference for God. King David. Stories where they quit looking at what other people had, and instead they focused on what they could do with what God has given them. And it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing what God can do through 1-bag people fully surrendered to Him. And then, like I said, there's us, right? Most of us here are 2-bag people, right? Somewhere in the middle. And it's easy for us to get caught in between. Well, It's not fair because the 5 bag people have all these resources and the 1 bag people make all these great stories. What can I do? You just need to focus on the 2 bags God has given you and leverage it for His glory. But in any event, you don't enjoy the stories where people spent what they were given on themselves. And you don't fork over $20 to go to a movie so you can watch a story about someone who went through life making excuses. There's no heroes in that category. So the challenge for you and the challenge for me is to focus on what has God given us. Remember, it's not ours in the first place. He's entrusted it to us, and we're going to have to give an account for it. I think that's the key verse in that whole story, verse 19. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. Now, if you're the kind of servant who's all in for God and you know that you're leveraging what He's given you for His glory, that's something you get to look forward to. That's somewhat something that you get to anticipate. I cannot wait for that day. I cannot wait to present to Him what I've done with this. I cannot wait for Him to be pleased with me. Or it can be that moment in life you dread and you got your list of excuses ready. I'm just telling you, you might be able to convince your friends, you might be able to convince mama, but you won't be able to convince Him. He won't buy it. Because here's the deal. We are all given time. Some are given more time than others. We're all given resources. Some are given more resources than others, but we're all given resources. We are all given an opportunity. And so the person of responsibility is the person who says, you know what? I'm not going to take this opportunity for granted like some 5-bag people do. And I'm not going to make excuses like some 1-bag people do. And I'm not going to get lost in comparison like some 2-bag people do. I'm going to take what I have. I'm going to leverage it all for His glory. That's what it really means to be responsible with life.